Well, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you.
Yeah, awesome to be on here. We love some of the documentaries you've been putting together, and it's a pretty cool moment for us to be on here and share some of our story.
Yeah, absolutely. Really psyched up to be on here.
Awesome. Well, we've had Coach Popp on before. I've never been more nervous for an interview than that one. He's an intimidating man, but he's a teddy bear, and it was great to learn about the NC State program. We'll start with you, Hayden. How did it get on your radar? I know you're a PA guy. Like NC State, was it the Binghamton connection, or how did it all start for you?
So it actually started with Frank Beasley. He's the head coach at George Mason now, but he was the associate head once I got to NC State. And he actually married a woman from Lewistown, Lindsay Beasley, formerly Lindsay Snyder. Her brother was a really great wrestler in our area and actually wrestled at UVA. So he married her, and so he had that Lewistown, Pennsylvania connection. And so I was always on his radar, and I was pretty familiar with him because he spent a lot of time there. And he kind of taught me what Pac mentality was and opened me up to NC State. And, they were I was always interested in them because of all the information I got from Frank. And, I went on a visit there and was hooked pretty immediately. And for me, it wasn't ever really much of a decision. I just felt really comfortable with those guys, and kind of Frank opened up the door to that.
And Trent, how long was Hayden out of the house when you were just back in PA holding it down while he was at NC State?
Yeah, so Hayden's 2 years ahead of me in school. So we were on the team my freshman year of high school. He was a senior. Or no, that's not true. My sophomore year of high school, he was a senior. So after that, I had 2 years in high school where he was at NC State and I was still in high school.
Was there any thought that you would go anywhere besides NC State?
Yeah. My recruitment process was a little different. I think for me, I wanted to keep all my options open. And I had a lot of good schools that were in contact with me. And I think at the time, I think a few schools kind of assumed I was going to NC State. But then there was also a few that I had a lot of interest in, and I just met a lot of good coaches, and had seen a lot of good programs through some of my visits. By the time I year at this point in the recruitment process for high school, you had to wait till senior year to take official visits. So I waited, and I took 4 officials to NC State, Iowa, Lehigh, and Purdue. So those are my top 4. And I really enjoyed all the schools. I thought they all had a lot of great stuff to offer. But in the end, I felt really good at NC State.
NC State's in Raleigh, right?
Yeah, Raleigh, North Carolina. Yep.
That's my 5-year plan, to live in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's funny because I've never been there. I used to live in California. Love the mountains, love the warm weather. Now I'm back in the windy city of Chicago. Obviously, neither. And so I've been saying I don't know if I can live in Florida. Texas is a little crazy, but man, North Carolina, that might be the sweet spot. And Raleigh's got so much going on. Hayden, did you just kind of fall in love with the campus and the town when you got there?
Yeah, I didn't really know much about it. Like, obviously, like I'm not like, I wasn't always like knowledgeable in the South, and kind of just wrestling wasn't always big there. So outside of like going to Super 32, I didn't know anything about North Carolina. Outside of like going to the beach at the Outer Banks. And so going to Raleigh was like, my first kind of like time touring like a city that's not like overly huge, but definitely growing. And it's crazy how you can kind of get whatever you want out of living in Raleigh, because you're close to the mountains, you're 2 hours from the beach, you're in a really happening city that's growing, and you have all these businesses located there. And so it's been kind of really cool to see the growth in these past 5 years. And, now we have Apple that wants to put some of their headquarters in the RDU area.
Yeah.
And it's like, this place is just going to take off, and it just keeps growing. And there's just so many connections here that, it's very different from, kind of what I'm used to growing up in small town Pennsylvania, but it's definitely a very cool city. If you're a younger person, there's a lot of great things about living here. And so it's definitely the best of kind of everything. And the biggest key to that then is, you don't have to go through a harsh winter. And, going through 18 of them in Pennsylvania, then you have, you come down to Raleigh and it's like 45 degrees on some days, and you have people wearing like big puffy winter coats, and you can just kind of chill in a sweatshirt if you're from the north. But that's kind of a really like, I mean, it's a small aspect of it, but it was a sell for me. It's like, if I can go to a really high quality program and have a high quality of life, and not have to worry about shoveling snow to get out of your car, that's kind of a cool little aspect to it.
Oh, it's huge. It goes a long way. I mean, just the daylight, seeing sun once in a while is nice. So
Yeah.
when on the recruiting journey, Hayden, did you meet Pat Popp? And for folks who don't know who that is, what's he like as a person, as a coach?
Yeah, so my first connection, like I said, was to Frank, and then I um, once kind of the July 1 or just like the junior year kind of recruiting started happening for me, get a call from Coach Pat, and my kind of first thoughts from him, just seeing him like in matches and stuff like that, is he's a taller guy than what you're used to in wrestling. He's always wearing black. Looks really intimidating, like you're watching Goodfellas or The Sopranos and stuff like that. Just because he's got the long Italian last name, and then you start talking to him, and he's got like a really kind of dry sense of humor, but I do too, and we really connected through that. And he's definitely a tough guy. But it's so funny whenever you get in his circle, hearing him laugh can make you laugh. So there is that intimidation factor. And I think we like that as a team because, we have a leader who's out there. And during the matches, he gets really intense, does a lot of finger pointing. And I can only imagine the way that the refs have to feel whenever you have a guy like that kind of barking down your neck. But once I went and visited the NC State and just kind of saw him in his comfort zone, is like, this guy's like a true alpha male, and he's running his program the way he wants to. And I got a lot of confidence from that. His confidence kind of rubs off on the other people. And it's a very intense, like, workout environment. You walk into a first real college practice and you just see guys fighting for every point like it's national finals. And it's very hard as a high school student to like visualize that. You walk into that room for the first time, you're like, all right, this is what real wrestling looks like. And to me, that completely sold me. They didn't need to say much else after that visit. I was like, watching the guys on the team wrestle was like, yeah, I want to come here.
Yeah, it's awesome. And Trent, when you were first coming on board, what was your first month like at NC State in the college room? Oh, no, I can't hear you, Trent. Pop the headphones out. And I can cut all this out. It's no big deal. No one will even know. Go ahead.
No.
No. Now we go. We're back, baby. We're back. Yeah, just first couple months on campus and getting your taste of D1 wrestling.
Yeah, so I started out at NC State. I did a summer session after high school. So I got there and kind of got accustomed to a little bit of schooling. I took like one class and got to meet all the freshmen, and it was a tough summer. As soon as I got to NC State, a little bit like Hayden said, you get sold on going there and seeing how hard the guys train and how much it means to them, and how intense the coaches are about training and wanting to be better. And that was something that they had pitched to me during the recruiting process. And once I got to NC State, it was exactly what they had told me. We're going to train hard. You're going to do well in school. You're going to have some growing pains. It's not going to be easy. But just trust in the process, and you're going to end up doing really good things. So I'd say my first few months was pretty much what I expected. And I think coming in through college with knowing that, the 2 years before, I had seen how Hayden had adjusted. I'd seen him go through the process and kind of hearing from him how his experience was. I think that helped me a little bit because I wasn't so green to what I was going to see. Obviously, it's a whole new experience. I've never seen that level of wrestling before, but I kind of knew what to expect. And I knew that if I could be patient and get through my first year and take the lumps in the room and just keep challenging myself, that I was gonna find success, and I was gonna get better through that process. So I think that was probably the hardest part, was just knowing you're getting beat up every day, but at the same time knowing it's really beneficial for you and just keep going. So yeah, I'd say first few months was a lot of growing pains in the wrestling room.
So did you redshirt or did you come right out the gate?
Yeah, I redshirted my first year. I redshirted at 174 for the first half of the year. I did pretty good. I wrestled had some good wins. I got fourth at the Southern Scuffle. But then I think the long-term plan for me was to go to 184 for the next few seasons. So halfway through, I bumped up and started working on getting bigger. And I think it helped because I was able to start seriously training with like Mock and Timmy McCall, and Nick Reenan and those guys, because they were always a little bit bigger. And when I was just constantly cutting weight, it was kind of hard for me to hang in with them. So that helped me. I think that really that second half of my red shirt and then my spring, when I started wrestling with the RTC a lot, I really jumped levels. And that was huge for me. I started winning more. And the vision of everything that the coaches had told me, kind of my process, it all started to click for me a little bit. I was gaining some confidence in the way I was wrestling and the way I was competing, and that was huge for me going into my redshirt freshman year at 184.
Yeah, it's crazy when you talk to people who redshirted, they say the jumps they made during that year are just crazy. And so to think of coming out the gate and starting it's a little wild to think about. Hayden, did you redshirt?
Yeah, I also redshirted. So I was down at 157. I got a lot of matches in, was able to go out to Midlands. I didn't really wrestle too well there. I was a round short of placing. But I think the redshirt year is so tough just because you're juggling all of the things outside of wrestling as well. You're trying to fit in on the team. You're trying to fit in with your academics, and that was the biggest kind of advantage for me taking a red shirt. Not was just like get my feet under me for wrestling because I was good. It's just like when you start adding in all those other components, it can be pretty tough. And I think if people that are like forced right into the lineup, they have to figure that out a lot quicker than somebody who like me who redshirted. But it was tough because whenever I redshirted, our starting 157 pounder actually had to go out in the early in the season with an injury, and so there was this big hole where like I felt like, oh yeah, I can just step in and be the guy, and then they're like, nah, you're not coming out of red shirt, and then they pulled out another guy, and so I was like, man, I don't really know what's going on here. I thought I'd be good enough to be the starter, and then they're like, and I talked to him. I was like, if the team needs me, I'm there. Like I don't mind coming out of redshirt. And they're like, no, that's not the plan. And they stuck to the plan. The next year comes around. I'm a redshirt freshman. I start. I go undefeated until the national finals. And so, like Trent
Epic
said,
year.
that
That was fun.
the kind of prophecy plan, like it worked out, and like that's where you start to really gain trust with these coaches because anybody else could have pulled me out of red shirt that one year and, maybe I scraped my way to an All-American finish, but, they pull, I start as a red shirt freshman and have a great year and contribute to our team getting a team trophy at NCAAs. And so, it's lessons like that where you put all your trust into the coaches. And that's why, why we come to NC State is because we believe in them and they trust in us. And you start to gain that bond with them through decisions like that.
And thank God, right? Because the COVID situation, you would have been done if you wouldn't have redshirted, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Oof, scary to
Yeah,
think about.
that's like going back in time. You want to thank Frank
Yeah.
Beasley, Coach Popolizio, and Obi Blanc, who was like, because I was good enough to All American that year, and they decided that it was much better for the team and myself if I waited.
Now, both of you guys, you have, even though I'm not, East Coast guy, a PA guy, couple of your matches really stand out in my mind. Both of you guys, Trent, for you, it was the first weekend, might have been your first or second weekend out. When did you wrestle Louis Dupre? Was that your first weekend?
It was it was real early in the season. I think we had done. Oh, I can't remember Hayden. That might have been our first duels. I think.
Yeah, I think so because we wrestled
Yeah.
Cornell
So we
at
wrestled
like at
Cornell
one.
at like 1, and then we traveled to Binghamton and wrestled them at night.
Gotcha.
That was like our first two duels of the season, I believe.
But that was a big one for you, right? Because you had a couple of ranked guys right out the gate.
Yeah. So that was really big for me. Kind of like my my coming out party, I'd say as a college wrestler, I had Darmstadt in the morning, and then Dupre in the evening, who they were both top 5 in the country at my weight, and I think I was like, I hadn't beaten anybody yet, so I was probably top 20, I think. But I remember the coaches putting this together like, hey, we want to get you really good matches right away, and we want you to show the country what you're made of. So I was fired up. I was really excited for the opportunity. And two guys, I had never wrestled Darmstadt before. I had wrestled Dupre in high school, and he beat me up pretty bad. But it was a great opportunity, and the team wrestled really well. We beat up Cornell pretty good, and then I had beat Darmstadt, and then later in the evening I wrestled Dupre in a really close match and came out on top. But that was again almost like Hayden said, that was big for me, just gaining confidence, because I in my ear my whole red shirt leading up to this year. The coaches are like, you're a top guy in the country, like you're gonna beat all these guys. And it's hard to kind of visualize that if you've never wrestled anybody like that.
Did you believe him?
Yeah. I mean, I totally believe them. It's just not having those matches yet. It's hard to convince yourself that you're a top guy in the country when you haven't beaten them. And it's like you're going through a lot your first few years, and then you finally get to that opportunity, and and you win. You're like, okay, things are really going to plan. I know I've done the right things. I know things are starting to pay off for me. And what's next.
I love it, man. That was just so fun to watch. And yeah, I knew Hayden's name. I didn't really know a lot about you from the high school days. And man, just coming out like a gamer early on in the year against, two really good guys. That was awesome. And then Hayden, for you, I know you lost the match, but the year you wrestled Nolf in the semis, that might be one of the best college matches I've ever seen in my entire life. And I know there was some crazy officiating, either way you look at it, but even though you lost, and it's probably a heartbreaking loss, got to look back at that match as one where you guys just both went all out.
Yeah, I think in terms of like matches that people ask me about, it's definitely at the top. And there's obviously like the scoring sequence that was a little nutty, but
Right.
I think it was really important for me, that match, just because of the year that I was having. My freshman year, I went undefeated. I wrestled Nolf in the finals, and he beat me. Pretty convincingly, like, I don't know, by a couple takedowns. And then the sophomore year, I come back and I have these bunch of ups and downs. It's very inconsistent. I show up in December, and it's like I was going through this issue where I just couldn't score. Like I couldn't get takedowns, and it's like it's almost like a golfer having the yips, where you just like, when is this going to end? And I remember I lost to Larry Early from Old Dominion. I lost to Tyler Berger from Nebraska. That was within like 2 weeks of each other. And so it's like you go a whole year without losing in a regular season. The next year comes around, I'm losing to Larry Early. Then I'm like just fighting for like a dogfight win against Appalachian State. And then, Tyler Berger comes into our home, arena, and he beats me, and it didn't feel that close. And I remember I had to talk with Pat, and I was like, Pat, I'm not sure what's going on. I think I forgot how to wrestle. And he's like, what we can do is, go home for Christmas, like go get off the mat for 5 days. Don't even touch the mat. And I was like kind of hesitant at first. I was like, I don't know how that's going to help me with wrestling if I stop wrestling. I need to figure out how to get a takedown. And, it turns out it worked. I came back after January, and I just kept incrementally getting better. It wasn't like my freshman season where I just went, I didn't have any losses. That sophomore season, I had to really kind of pull myself out of a pretty, dark and a little bit of a hole. And so I fly through the ACCs, look great. ACC tournament looked great. And then the nationals, I get a pretty tough seed. I think I was a 5th seed. And I saw that I would have Nolf in the semis. And it was like, all right, I'm wrestling my best right now. It doesn't quite matter. I could be the 2 seed and meet him in the finals. I'm going to have to beat him anyways. And, I get him in the semis. I knew I was having my best wrestling of the season, and it just wasn't quite enough. And I think, you're able to, reconcile that because of, who he is and what kind of talent he is. And so although I lost, I don't have any regrets because of the way that I was able to kind of bounce back from a tough start in that season and able to regain my footing and get my best wrestling in the end. And, I left that tournament with a 4th place finish, but I knew that I was good enough to hang with the best guys. And, that's kind of been a struggle in my career, is just, beating the best guys in the national tournament. And, my move up to 174 now, I think, is a lot of it's just focusing on, enjoying this last year. And, you're going to have to beat a bunch of really good guys, but, I've got 1 year left, and, why not give it another shot? That's kind of what it comes down to. And, when you wrestle guys like Nolf, you kind of realize, if I can hang with somebody like this, then, I can win a lot of matches in this sport. And just trying to figure out that last bit in March has been the struggle for me.
I'm sure it has been, but just from afar, it's like, that's maybe one of only a few times I've ever seen Nolf where you thought he was going to lose. Aymar obviously had some great scraps with him, but man, awesome match. And I go back and rewatch it all the time. I'm curious for you, Trent, watching Hayden go through that, were you thinking like, man, what's going on here? Or were you like, what were your thoughts early in the season, some of those early season struggles?
Yeah, I guess it was kind of it was a little interesting for me because I was redshirting that year.
Okay.
So I'm kind of a utility guy, right? I'm going through like 4 workouts a day. I'm seeing kind of everything that the team is doing. I'm just not in the starting lineup. But I'm seeing, I'm there with Hayden every step of the way, trying to help him out, get what he needs. And it's like he just got done with at the U23 championships. He gets a little injured, but wrestles really good. Comes back, and then you get thrown right into the college season, which isn't easy. And all of a sudden, you're wrestling guys that you had beaten before, and they want to take you out, and they wrestle strategic matches. And I think what's hard about college wrestling is you come onto the scene as a freshman, and you have all this intensity, you have all this stuff that people have never really seen before, and then all of a sudden the next year people are game planning you like crazy. So it's a little bit of a growing pains. I think Hayden will probably admit that that's something that has helped him grow, is people trying to game plan that. But I'd say not even just as a teammate, but as a brother, you have to find a way to just bring him back to equilibrium a little bit. I think we do a good job of helping each other out during losses and stuff, but obviously it's never easy, right? You want answers right away. But in the back of my mind, I knew, not even just going into NCAA's, but the whole season, that he was going to compete for a national title. That's just the way he was wrestling. I liked the way he matched up against guys, and you have faith in the people that you're surrounded with. And I had never, those losses didn't mean a whole lot to me at that point. I knew he would bounce back and wrestle his best at NCAA's, but I'd say that's one of the challenges, is just trying to, when you're not just brother, but your teammate or someone that you're close to goes through something like that, you're trying to, think of the right words, think of the right things to do. And, a lot of times it's just you taking a little bit of time off and then getting back to the grind of it all.
For sure. No, it's like, you don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to say too much or too little. Hayden, do you think it was something where you're just putting too much pressure on yourself looking back at it?
I think the whole idea of people game planning you after a whole year of seeing you is tough, especially for guys like Trent and I that, we probably came into our college careers very reliant on underhook offense and just being in that control position. And once you start to have guys that just are going to eliminate that at all costs, like if I'm going to beat you, it's going to have to be with something else. And for me, that was really hard to do. And still to this day, that's what we have to deal with, is if we can't score with an underhook, then, you got to figure some things out. And we've gotten much better at that. But that second year of mine, I'm constantly looking for the stuff that made me so great, and guys are completely changing the way that they wrestle. And I think that was very tough for me. And there was a time where I was like, all right, I feel like like if I'm not getting to my underhook, so this is going to go bad. And it's like, whenever you have that anxiety, I think, for a match, it's a tough thought. And so I really just had to get over that. And I think what I would do is, in practice, I would just say, all right, I just can't use an underhook for like this bit. And I'll just tell like the practice partner, do whatever you can at all costs to not let it in. And so once I started to get some more confidence in my other offense, I started to really develop a lefty high C. And off of that, if you are good at, lefty high C or just a straight on single, like I've been able to develop, the underhook comes back later in the match. And so I think as the year progressed, that issue kind of started to diminish, and I got way more confidence just being able to, hand fight to get to other attacks. And whenever it was earlier in the year in like November and December, that was kind of tough because I was just wrestling like I did my freshman year whenever people didn't have a whole lot to go off of. And it's one thing to see it like that freshman year, but once you feel it, it's much harder. And so I think that's why I was able to do so well that freshman year, is because a lot of people just didn't feel that style. And I was able to score a lot from it. But that sophomore year, I had to really I had to really make myself uncomfortable in practice, especially, and going through those pains. And, once you got through that, though, it was okay.
I love it though. Those are the turning point moments where it's like the real growth happens. Did you guys watch a lot of Yazdani growing up with those underhooks?
I not growing up, no, but the past few years, we really started to pay attention to his style and kind of work towards that a little bit. It's obviously impossible to be Yazdani, but you can take a look at what he does, and it's pretty damn successful. So we better take some notes.
Yeah, I think what Trent and I talked about yesterday is when he just wrestled David Taylor in the World Finals. It's like, we were acting like we were his coach in Yazdani, like before the match, and they're just telling each other like, all right, what's the plan today? And then they look at each other and says, absolutely nothing but underhooks. Don't even try to do anything else. And it like worked, which is crazy because he just holds position so well and moves forward that, why not? And it's such a tiring position. Like the Trent talks about a lot. It's not the underhook itself. It's the pressure of moving forward. And then he just constantly snaps. And so that kind of, back and forth is just really difficult. And, he sold out on that game plan and just was like, there's nothing else. It's option A. There's no option B today. And it's tough to watch as like an American fan because it just keeps happening. And he would just get into an underhook. And even if he wasn't scoring, he's taking 30 seconds there of just, minimizing any offense. And so it's like, I don't think I'd be able to wrestle like that just because I feel like I'd tire myself out. Like you have to wrestle like that all your life to be able to do that. And, we throw a lot of underhooks, but, it's a very different kind of skill set that he has. And we try to pick up as much as we can, but it's all about just moving forward and getting the guy to the out of bounds line. And that helps a lot in freestyle and folk style. It's a little bit different. I don't think you can wrestle his style and folk style too well.
Yeah, every time you watch those matches, who's got a bigger gas tank than Magic Man? But Yazdani obviously wrestles a crazy high pace. And every time David Taylor's right lat is just scratched up like a tiger's been in there, man. It's just Yazdani clawing for those underhooks. Crazy to watch. So that series in particular, so much passion because Yazdani's got the weight of Iran on his shoulders every time he gets out there.
Yeah.
I can't post something on Instagram with David Taylor in it without 200 Iranian flags coming through. It's crazy.
It's awesome.
Do you guys have plans to wrestle afterwards? Or are you thinking MMA? You're thinking coaching? Are you thinking Olympics? Go ahead, Trent.
My plan as of right now, we had got an extra year for COVID. So really I have 3 years of eligibility left. And I plan on using that, staying healthy and wrestling as long as I can. And my plans as of right now is to stay and wrestle at the senior level and try to make world and Olympic teams. I think coming into college, it's kind of funny looking back. I was never really a big freestyle guy. I had wrestled it, but I always thought I was better at folk style. And my redshirt year, like I said, I'd spent a lot of time with the RTC guys, and I was getting beat up a lot. I wasn't winning any matches. But I think during that time I didn't realize it, but my wrestling IQ was getting a lot bigger. And I really started to like freestyle a lot. Then that spring I had won like the junior open in Vegas and made the world team, and then got bronze at the junior world championship. So it kind of opened my eyes up a little bit to like, you can compete on the world stage and in this level. And if you can do it now, why not? Why can't you do it in 6 years? So I want to wrestle as long as I can. It's what I love. So as long as I can stay healthy and enjoy doing it, I definitely want to make a push and try to make a world and Olympic team.
2028's got a nice ring to it. 2024, either one, right?
Yeah. Don't
Either
don't
one.
get something out too quick. I'll be ready in 2024. I'm bringing the heat. I'll be ready to rock.
Perfect. World's on notice. Yazdani included. You might be a little heavier than him though. Hayden, what about you, man? I've listened to a couple interviews you've done. Both you guys did a podcast with the Wrestling Recess. That little guy does a great job, by the way. Whoever runs that out of Pennsylvania, fantastic. But on that, I think you said, Hayden, that you wanted to coach someday. I'm sure you're trying to wrestle as long as you can, but have you started to think about, coaching and some of the things you want to do afterwards?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this last year was tough because I was left with a decision of what to do, if I would take another year. And for me, I was kind of tired of cutting weight. And so I talked with Pat. I was like, listen, if you just let me wrestle whatever weight I want, then I'll come back and wrestle another year. And that's been a pretty big joy. I don't have to worry about cutting down to 157 anymore. And, 174, I was able to wrestle at 79 kilos at the World Team Trials. Kind of had a tough draw there and wrestled Jordan Burroughs first round, but
got a takedown though.
That's true. I did give the world some pointers on how to take him down. I went out in the first 30 seconds, got an arm spin, but nobody at the World Championships tried it. So I'm not sure if they were watching enough film. No, but that would have been really cool if I didn't give up 3 takedowns in the match. But yeah, I'm just kind of rediscovering, a new passion for the sport right now. I think moving up 2 weight classes is really tough. Cutting weight's really tough though. So
yeah,
just
why not the
rediscovering.
Why not just 165 then? And you got somebody on the team. It's already there.
Well, if I would have gone 165, so I was cutting a good bit to get down to 157. Then once I stopped cutting, I grew some more weight. And so I would just end up cutting down to 165, and that would kind of defeat the purpose of me coming back for another year, just enjoying things. And so I was like, if I just go 174, I can gain some weight, focus on getting my body ready for that weight. And I'll be able to train with Trent quite a bit more. And I think once you go through a couple years of a lot of disappointment at the NCAA tournament, you have this freedom year. And if it's going to be like a free year for me to take, I might as well enjoy it as much as I can. And I put a lot of pressure on myself in previous years. And, after I didn't finish as well as I thought I could, I think it's just really important for me to take the reset button and be like, all right, spend one more year, enjoy this as much as you can. I don't know if I'm going to wrestle after this year. I know I want to get into coaching and help guys out, but why not take this year and just, have no regrets about it. I don't want to have any regrets about cutting weight. I want to spend as much time as I can being a better wrestler. And so that was a lot, it was a big decision for me, and it was pretty risky to say, all right, I'm going up 2 weights to take on the best weight class in the country, it could be. So yeah, it's a tough decision to make, but one that I don't have any regrets about because, I've had a great career so far. I put a lot of pressure on myself to win, and, when I haven't, I've been pretty tough on myself. And so why not spend 1 year and, if it goes bad, then it goes bad, but don't have any regrets about it, so yeah, you asked about MMA, freestyle coaching. MMA is definitely out of the picture for me.
Okay.
I think it takes a different breed of people to do that. I consider myself very tough, but I don't have that. All right, lock the cage up. Let's go at it and see who can pretty much fight to the death. So it's like, I don't know if I have that level of killer instinct to be able to put up with that. And if things go well and I start wrestling well this year, then I enjoy every process and step of the way, then yeah, I'll keep wrestling and competing. But I definitely want to throw my hat in the ring into coaching. I feel like I've got a good background of that. It's just all the coaches that I've been surrounded by. And, if you think about it, I'm like 7 years older than some of the guys on the team. And so I might as well be a coach this year.
That's so crazy that, with the COVID year and all that. Yeah. It's like, man, like the 4-year, 5-year window. So far out the door, and you could be a 5-time ACC champ, right?
Yeah. So whenever the NCAA championships were canceled 2 years ago, we wrestled at ACCs and I won that. So I've won 4 ACC titles, going for my 5th this year, and it's going to be the toughest one yet. So I think that's there's a lot of things to look forward to this year, and the one is just how brand new it's going to be. I haven't ever wrestled at this weight class. I was able to wrestle the World Team Trials at it, and I wrestled 2 of the best guys in the world, and so that at least showed me is like, all right, I don't have any worries about, the weight's not that big of a deal. I battled Jordan Burroughs for 6 minutes, and although I lost in that and I lost by 2 takedowns, it's still like, that's literally the best guy in the world at 174-ish pounds. So, you're going to do fine. My wrestling knowledge is good and my experience is there. It's just, you got to get used to that weight a little bit.
I gotta ask, what's it feel like to step on the mat with the great one, JB? Is it the double that's so quick? Like, what is it looking back on it?
You know what? I think like I talked with my coaches before, and the funniest part about this whole thing is they redrew that bracket 3 times in an hour before the tournament started. So after weigh-ins, I checked the bracket. I've got Taylor Liu on first round, and I'm game playing with my coaches like, all right, just keep things basic, get takedowns, don't get into a scramble fest. And then they redrew the bracket again, and I have Alex Deeringer, and I'm like, oh, geez, here we go. Let's change the game plan. Don't let him get my elbows. Don't get hit in the dump. Just like, you're getting him off the scale, make it a long kind of drawn out match. And then they redraw the bracket again, like after I get done warming up. And then I see Jordan Burroughs and I'm like, whatever. At this point, let's just do it. And I think because of how comical it all was, it was like I didn't get time to get nervous. And you step out there, and he definitely has an aura about him when he steps out on the mat. He's got like kind of like leans back almost like it's just like another day in the office. And I knew that I was going to like kind of frustrate him from the start because he's never wrestled me before. And I know I can get one good underhook sequence on most people. And the game plan was, if you get to an underhook, do something crazy because, you don't know how many chances you're going to get from there. So I get a good underhook and I go right into an arm spin and was able to get a takedown from it. And then like after that, you kind of have to, all right, how am I going to score again? Because he's not going to let me do this again. Like there's no chance that he's going to let me in an over under. And the one thing that I would say that goes underappreciated about him is, a person like me is really good at defending his double. I gave up a pretty good double takedown that he got on me, but my underhooks are so good I can kind of defend and bring him up. But what people don't appreciate is how good his single leg is. And from somebody that's wrestled him, I put his single leg and his double leg right at the same level. They cause that much fear, both ways. Because if you're constantly looking for that double, he's looking to get your level lower. And so you lower your level, he snaps and is just able to chase to that ankle and go single leg.
Yeah.
And that's a really tough thing for people to understand is how good he is at doing that. It's one big setup. He body fakes, you lower your level, he kind of snaps and just like throws his body at it. And next thing you know, he's on your ankle. And so like for me, that was a big, I learned a lot from that just because like, yeah, he's got a great double leg, but his single leg's just as good because of the way he's able to set you up.
It reminds me of John Smith, obviously the low single, but really the elbow to the high C was what he hit maybe more because everyone's so afraid of the distance. It got to tie it up. And then he hits him with the elbow to the high C. So Trent, obviously you didn't wrestle the likes of Jordan Burroughs, but I'm just curious, when you were coming up, who were some of your favorite guys to watch, either U.S. wrestlers or international wrestlers that you really modeled yourself after, whether in high school or college?
Let's see. I don't know if I necessarily ever took any. Honestly, probably Hayden's style had kind of molded mine the most. I think because we wrestled so much. My 8th grade and freshman year at high school, we pretty much wrestled like every day in practice, and I got beat up so much that I tried to do underhooks and I was really bad at it and I couldn't really figure it out. And I just kept doing it until I got good at it. So I'd say just by wrestling him, that's kind of where my underhook style came from. But we grew up in the center of PA, and when we were little, there was a lot of good wrestling. I mean, you had the Alton brothers who lived an hour away from us that wrestled our teams all the time. Mitchell Port, guys like Buck Dippery that were in our area that I looked up to a lot. Quentin Wright wrestled for Bald Eagle.
Yeah.
We would go to Penn State matches and watch him, and he'd always made an underhook so effortless. He scored so easily with it. And I think just growing up in that area of District 6 and Central PA, you saw all these guys and they were really good at the high school level, and then they were really good at the college level. So I think that gave both Hayden and I a little bit of confidence, knowing that, guys like us from a small town like Lewistown, Pennsylvania, we could compete at a really high level. We could accomplish our goals, and we trained really hard. I'd say as I started to get older, definitely in the college, I've really grown to like watching the international style a lot. I think, and I know we had talked about Yazdani, but like that's a guy that I could watch for hours and try to emulate what he's doing. And I think I've picked some good things up.
Yeah.
Really, I think I have a pretty unique style, and I like to I get confidence off that. I think that's fun for me, knowing that, I do some things that not a lot of people do. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I know at the end of the day, I put a lot into being myself on that, and that's where I get my identity from. And that's why I love the sport. You can, it's for everybody. Everybody can have that thing that they do. And for me, I know I wrestle a little bit different. I'm a little different in the head than a lot of people, but
all great champions do that though, man. Saitiev had his own style. John Smith had his own style. Like a lot of the greats, man, they have something that they do that nobody else does. So you're in good company there.
Yeah. I hope, I hope I can have the accolades that these guys have.
Yeah, I think Trent's style too is like, it's like so much aggression, and that's what, like, you hear it all the time. Is like when you watch his matches, you have the coaches in the opposing corners like, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. But like if you can't stop it, then a lot of people would say, oh, he's only got this, he's only got this. But once you feel that pressure and he's constantly just being the aggressor, it's a tough thing to deal with. And I really like watching Trent's style just because of that. Is what's coming, but he can tire you out to get to there. And then next thing you know, he's developing this new stuff. And so I really got a lot of confidence just from watching Trent this year, because, if you look at his resume and freestyle, it's off the charts good, like sneaky good, because one, he beat Miles Amin, who won a bronze medal at the Olympics. And it's like, he's right there with everybody. Right. He's at 86 kilos. That's just a crazy weight at the United States. But
crazy,
Trent's wins are incredible this year.
No doubt, man. That's what's so exciting, in that you guys are all leading this resurgence of Southeast wrestling, which is just unthinkable to me, that there are so many schools that are competing hard in the ACC. Unthinkable in the sense of, 20 years ago, you didn't even consider it. And now there's more D1 wrestling in North Carolina than there is the great state of Illinois, which is just shocking to me. And it's awesome. It bums me out. It's awesome in North Carolina, but it's like, that's a model for what we can do in every state. I got one question left for both of you. Start with you, Hayden. And I don't mean to bring another program into the mix, but Trent, you reminded me that you guys grew up near Penn State. I got to know, Hayden, what was the atmosphere like when Zane upset Logan Stieber?
Yeah, so Trent and I were actually at that match.
Were you?
Yeah, yep. We actually had, we grew up 30 minutes.
We grew up season ticket holders.
Yep.
Dang.
Season ticket holders. I must have been in I want to say I was in 9th grade at the time when it happened. And I've been there for some loud moments. Like I was there. My first wrestling match that I ever went to as a kid, I was just getting into the sport. My dad never wrestled. And somebody was like, hey, you should come to this Penn State Lehigh match. And we go to the Penn State Lehigh match. And it's the match where John Trenge got thrown out and his dad threw a water bottle out into the mat. And it was like, wait a minute, this is what wrestling is? Like, it was insane, because John Trenge just had the goggles and the guy was poking him in the eye, and he just kind of went crazy a little bit. And that was my first wrestling match I ever watched. And I remember that being crazy as 6 years old. And then you go forward about 10 years. And, we were season ticket holders, watched all the matches with Penn State and Iowa, just absolute bonkers kind of stuff. And I remember growing up, we trained in the same club as Zane. And so we were pretty close with him, and definitely rooting for him at the time. And
was he just a killer growing up? Was he just an animal though, all the time?
Yeah. I mean, he was a little bit bigger than I was at the time. And so I never really got to kind of witness the pain of wrestling him. But he just was just gritty, like more gritty than you could even imagine. Like think about like the guy that just grinds your gears whenever you have to wrestle him. Give that to Zane, but he's just skilled everywhere, and that's a guy that I had a lot of fear for whenever I walked in the room. Is like if the practice partners thing, if that gets a little bit crazy, I might have to wrestle with him, and then hopefully I could just like make it out of there alive. But I think watching that match at Penn State, you just saw like Stieber looked a little bit off after the first period, like you could see that, and the crowd noticed it too, and they got behind Zane, and Zane kind of smelled blood a bit, and that was just crazy because nobody really made Stieber look like that. And, there's a lot of things that come out of that. It's just like maybe Stieber was sick, but like in order to sense that, you got to be a killer and an alpha yourself. And so I took a lot out of that. But yeah, Trent and I were season ticket holders all the way up through, the high school recruiting process. And like, they were pretty much full at my weight. Once I got there, Nolf was just getting into his zone and, wreaking havoc on everybody in the NCAA. And so there wasn't really a lot of interest there. And so it was kind of like after that, it's like, I don't really want to go to these matches anymore.
Right. It's crazy though to see that, because I just rewatched the match I had Zane on recently. Yeah, and a lot of people commented that Logan was sick. Okay, that may be the case, but dude, Logan had a bar so tight on Zane after that first takedown. I thought he was for sure turning him. Zane fights it, doesn't go to his back. Just an amazing match. And I forgot that you guys grew up right there, so I had to ask. Trent, last one for you, my friend. And I hope I'm thinking of you when I think of this, because I do so many of these. Sometimes I get stats confused. Your freshman year, did you have to cut down to like 138 because you had like you and Trent were the same weight, then you and Hayden were the same weight, then the guy below you was like a stud. So you ended up cutting like to like some drastic amount of weight, right?
Yeah. So my freshman year was kind of, Hayden and I actually both kind of went through a similar situation. Both of our freshman year in high school, it was kind of like hell. Hayden cut down to 113 and I cut down to 138.
From
I
what?
probably weighed like up like, at least mids, probably lower 60s, I'd say. And like I had never cut weight before. Like I wrestled my whole life. I'd never cut that much weight, and I didn't know what to do. And obviously I didn't do it right. Eating like Jolly Ranchers for lunch and putting on sauna suits and running after practice and pray to God you'd lose another pound. But like, dude, that was really hard for me. I will say, as hard as it was and as long as I had to do it for, I remember getting to a state tournament and I lost in the blood round to a kid. I was better than, he was just older. And I remember like that was really emotional for me. Part of it, I was so ready to be done with it. But I think I had gotten, still to this day, I got so tough from that year. And although it wasn't healthy for me, I took so much away from that mentally. Like, dude, if I can do this, then I can do whatever the hell I need to do to make weight or win a wrestling match. Like I have that instilled in me now that I'm going to be tough from that for my whole life. So it was terrible, but I also looked at it as a little bit of a gift, and knowing like I've gone through this and 99.9% of the population will never have to do something like that. And if I can get a little bit of edge, if I can get a little bit of edge from that, then I'm going to be pretty good going forward.
Yeah, I think definitely watching Trent do that made me feel bad because I was at the weight above him and I wasn't cutting as much. But it was like tough because I saw myself like my freshman year, I was cutting down to 113. And then the next year I wrestled 138. And so I was like, after I did it, I had a similar kind of thought process of it. I'm not as tough as Trent, so I didn't take the same thoughts away from it. I was like, screw this. I just want to be good at wrestling where I can wrestle where I want to. And I think in college, it's a different story. Like I figured out how to cut weight in college. Was doing it smart. And even though I say like, listen, I don't want to do 157 anymore, I was doing it in the right way. It's just, you get tired of it after doing it for 5 years. Oh. So that's much different than what I went through in high school, what Trent went through in high school. And, but looking back at that, it's like, oh man, that's kind of like not what you want to do. And I would, if I have kids that wrestle someday, I would not want them to
never let them happen. No.
Trent,
as a freshman, that's crazy. That
There
I
was
is,
think our parents were like, "What in the world is this?" Because my dad didn't wrestle. My dad was an athlete though, and he saw what we were doing. He's like, "What in the world is this?" And
good God.
I think it was like, like it's a tough learning process, but it's like something I wouldn't recommend doing. But it was kind of just like you kind of had to, because it was good for the team, and you're the new guy, and it's like, looking back then, I would have just said, screw it, I'm going up to 120 and beating whoever this is, even though he was good for the team to have that spot. But that's, I think, one thing that, you look back on is like, you learned a lot from it, and just lucky that, nothing bad happened.
Yeah. There's some dark days. You brought up some bad memories. Freshman
Dude,
year was the worst- freshman
I
year was the
honestly,
worst
I
year of my
remember
life.
at practice, Trent would just be like having a tough time, and I would always like have to get him pissed off just to make sure that he was like active and in the practice and losing weight. And so I would deliberately just try to piss him off to get him to wrestle back hard. And then next thing you know, 20 minutes goes by and he's like, "Oh, thank God we did that so I could get this weight off."
There were some unbelievable ass beatings my freshman and sophomore year. I think
Plus-
I might have scored a total of like 8 takedowns, I think, in 2 years. Like we went together every day, but obviously it was good for us. But
Man.
you brought up some really dark memories. Freshman year was the worst year of my life.
Well, dude, I just couldn't believe hearing you say that, because that's a lot for a college man to drop, let alone a baby face freshman, and let alone 138, such a man's weight to wrestle in. It's like the premier high school weight, one of them, and I just, I had to ask because I was just dying to know what it was like. And I mean, you guys, us three could sit around and talk wrestling for 4 hours, and I hope to make it out to NC State or have you guys back on soon. But man, it has just been an honor to speak with you gentlemen today. Any last words before we sign off, guys?
Thank you so much for having us on. It was tough that we had to end on a note like that, but
No, it's all good.
I think a PSA to give is just like, please don't follow that process. You're like, it might have made Trent really tough. It might have made me tough. Like, but I really think you can find other ways to do it.
Yeah,
Trent?
Thanks so much for having us on. I mean, I had a blast, and obviously we can talk wrestling and technique for hours. And so it's anytime you need us on, give us a call, and we'd love to have you at NC State to give you the tour.
Oh, it'd be awesome, man. I would love to do it. And no, I would absolutely love to have you guys back on, and even like without both you on, and dive into each career a little bit deeper. It's always interesting having 3 folks on, and you guys are like only like the second or third time I've done it. So I'm really glad we did it. It was so fun to have you both on here. Tell Coach Papalizio I say what's up. I don't try to bother him that often, but really just love talking to that guy and love seeing what he did at Binghamton, and then his brother bringing back the national duels and all that. So it's going to be a great season. And just thanks again, gentlemen. You have a great night.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate it.
Take care, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of Wrestling Changed My Life. To see video clips from this interview, please go to Instagram at Wrestling Changed My Life. This episode was proudly presented by Spartan Combat. The Spartan Combat Nationals are returning to Jacksonville, Florida, April 8th through the 10th, 2022. Register now at SpartanCombat.com.